Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan, the official host here at Reddit Voice, and today we're going to be looking at even more of the top stories from r/ProRevenge. Before we do, though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to stay up to date on all the latest videos. Don't fire the guy who holds the patents. This is not my story. I was present for it, sure, but I did not see all of it personally. Rather, this is my father's story. So, some context. My father had a degree in mechanical engineering, either a master's or a doctorate. It had taken him years to get, and he was very proud of that. Thanks to his training, he had found his way working for many well-known companies, working primarily with the procedures used to make various things. Over time, he privately began working on an idea that would revolutionize how school and gym lockers worked. See, my father realized that there was a problem with those types of metal lockers. Namely, it was very easy for a person to break into them. What's more, as the lockers were designed, there were multiple exposed moving parts, which meant that if a student put too many books in one, or really anything, got against the door, the locker could be jammed shut, making it near on impossible to open. So for several years, Dad toyed with a number of ideas before hitting on a new design which would solve all of those problems. The inner workings of the locker's locking mechanism would be contained within the door in such a way that 1. It was impossible for someone to shim or break into, and 2. The entire mechanism would be enclosed, and 3. It was relatively maintenance-free. Now at this point, my father was the vice president of manufacturing, and apparently there wasn't a clause in his contracting that said if he designed anything while working for the company that he had to turn over that to them for profit. Dad still approached the company offering them the design, but they weren't interested. Dad sat on the design for a while before eventually just taking out several patents on them and then forgetting about them. About 6 months after his first attempt at getting the company interested, the parent company's owner/chairman of the board passed away, and the board chairman of the board opted to sell off some of the holdings. The company my dad worked for was part of that. The new owners were young guys who seemed to think they knew everything, as young business owners always seem to think, and they set about changing 99% of the way things were being done. At some point, they stumbled across the plans my father had designed, and now that's where things turned curious. They really wanted to start producing this new design, but as they didn't have all the plans and the processes laid out for them, they had to turn to my father for answers. Rather than asking him how to do it or licensing the patents, as any reputable company would have done, they ordered him to turn over all of his work or else they would fire him. Dad stood his ground and refused, and the new owners and my father went back and forth, arguing over details for several weeks before finally the new owners fired my father for insubordination. So, on to the revenge. There may be more to this, but I'm not entirely sure if it's just pro-revenge. It could border on nuclear based on what happened some years later, though I'm not certain what happened later had anything to do with my father's actions. So after clearing out his office and packing his things in the trunk of his car, my father headed home and made a few phone calls. He must have gone through 8 or 9 different calls before he got in touch with someone who was interested in what he had to say. See, my dad was under no illusions that the company had fired him wasn't going to just make those patented lockers on their own. He also knew that though the company itself was relatively small, the owners had money and there was no way he could fight them. However, a large company could, so he contacted the major competitor and made them an offer. He eventually set up a meeting with some people, wheeled out the prototype he'd made, explained how everything worked, and noticed that with this system, the company could revolutionize the way lockers were both designed and improve both safety and security. What's more, as he was the only patent holder, for the next 7 years or so, that company would be the only company to produce them. The competitor jumped at the chance and bought all the patents both for the design and the process. They even paid my dad a substantial consultancy fee to go out to their manufacturer site and teach the crews how to make the needed tool and die sets to produce them. Less than 6 months after the first company had fired him, their number one competitor was completely destroying them in the market with this new design, and there wasn't a damn thing the first company could do about it. They did try suing my father, claiming he had stolen their intellectual property, but that case quickly evaporated when they had to admit under oath that they'd never actually signed a contract with him, and that there was no requirement that he turn over anything he created to the company. In the 7 years from when the second company bought the locker design and process patents, they pretty handedly moved into markets that previously they'd been unable to. The first company soldiered on, but by the time that the patent had finally expired, there was a shadow of their former selves. The new owners had sold the company at a loss, with the competitor buying it, only to shut that production facility down due to redundancy, put maybe 200 people out of work, though given how they'd lost so much business, I wager that it was far less than that. So yeah, the new guys don't want to play ball, threaten the guy that holds the patent on something they want to do, and then fire him, only to have him take everything to their competitor and effectively put them out of business. To answer some of the questions that have arose, here is the edit. Question 1. You don't know what his degree level was? My father and I had a difficult relationship. There are very few good memories I have of him, and it wasn't until shortly before his death in 2007 from a stroke that I really started to connect with him. I resented him for most all of my life because he was more career-minded than anything. I figured we moved some 10 times in 20 years, and it greatly affected me. For a rather long period of time, I am ashamed to say I hated my father and wanted nothing to do with him. 2. You must have ended up wealthy. Not really. Any money that Dad earned of his little endeavor was lost after an incident that left him disabled. Medical bills being what they are, by the end of it, we were pretty much broke. Patents last 20 years. Design patents don't. They last 14, but the courts have historically sided with companies infringing on design patents after 7 years, so long as the infringing company develops their own method to produce whatever design is being used and modifies or changes it. 4. What company was this? You know I can't tell you that. And 5. Any variation of how did the new owners not know? The answer is pure speculation on my part, however I got the impression that the owners were in their mid to late 20s and trying to act like investors. The company was on offer that was relatively cheap, and from what I know, but had a rather long history in the manufacturing field. HOA yells at me for training guide dog and grilling, then loses position on board. To start the story, some background you need to know about me. I volunteer and train and raise service dogs. My fiancé says clearly I have a look that says I am weak and a pushover. I have constant encounters with Karen who are just not ready for my responses when they engage me. I've been in the military for 17 years when this happened to me, and I was responsible for managing over 130 service members. I am anything but a pushover. I work with civilians, so I have cultivated a polite exterior, because when I was counseled for looking unapproachable and scary to civilian counterparts. So the story, as I said, I raise service animals, so I fall under the ADA when it comes to regulations on when and what I can do with my puppy. We'll call him O. O is an amazingly behaved black lab of 6 months. I've cultivated a level of trust and obedience where I can leave him in a sit with other dogs, and around so long as I'm in sight, he will stay. I have to raise a few pups by then, and I would never have done that with them, but O is amazing, and I can't wait to get him back after his tour of duty helping Mrs. C be independent. I meet the HOA Karen one Saturday. Me, my fiancé, and O were going to head on a road trip to visit my fiancé's parents. In our preparation, by the last of the list is always getting the kids to use the bathroom before a long trip. So we head out, O gets busy, and I grab a bag to clean it up, and I put him in a sit-stay, and hand the leash over to my girl. As I start walking to the trash can, which is about 100 feet from where he went, I have a clear line of sight to the dog, and he's sitting pretty and alert, waiting me intently for a hand cue or voice command. As I'm walking, I hear a womanly screech. I don't quit to make it out, but it sounds angry. I ignore it and keep walking to the dumpster, deposit my waste bag, and turn around and head back to my 2 favorite people. It is then I make eye contact with the HOA Karen. Karen from here on out. She is your typical Karen, not an inch over 5 foot, and has the same circumference. The short chopped hair that says, "I'm the manager now." She looks me in the eyes, and I finally listen to her shrill scream of, "Your dog must be on a leash and in your hand. My county state law says so, so I will call the cops." Now, I don't do ignorant, and respect given is respect earned. I was willing to try and de-escalate My fiance owns the condo and is super non-confrontational, so for her I try to bring it back down to civil levels of discussion. In a polite but firm voice, I ask if she even looked over at the dog before she started yelling at me. She just bellows like a banshee again. I repeat, this back and forth happens 3 or 4 times, and me calm her, escalating in pitch and volume. Sorry about some of the inconsistencies here. The writing and formatting on this post is not tubular. At this point, she hasn't given respect, so none is required to be given back. I break out my "you done effed up NCO" to junior voice, and it is loud, firm, and clearly states I'm done with your BS, lady. I clearly tell her if she would have taken the 2 seconds to look, she would see that the dog is sitting on a leash in someone's hands. She stops bellowing at me and looks and turns a bit red in the face, and then musters, "You could just say thank you." Which I curtly reply, "Shut the F up and get out of my face." She waddled quickly off, tail tucked, into her condo door. My next meeting with her was when I was grilling. The HOA states no charcoal grills and no smoking/barbecue. I was born in the north, but as a military brat moved to the south since I was 2. There is a difference between barbecuing and grilling. Barbecue is 12 plus hours with coals of hardwood or wood smoking. Grilling is cooking meat on a grill instead of the stove. The HOA put out a reminder on no barbecuing on the premises and no coals. So I was like, awesome, get a small propane grill. It's not barbecue, but it's better than nothing. So I was out grilling and I hear the banshee cry, all too familiar now. Again, she didn't come up to me and talk, she just starts screaming. So I looked her right in the eye and, with the same firm voice, "Shut the F up and go away. If you say one more word, I'll be the one calling the cops for harassment by an HOA member." She sputtered something out, but no grilling or open flames, and I told her to F off, showing in written and by someone else other than her. She waddled off, and then I was approached by the HOA president with the HOA bylaws and sat to read them, during which my fiancé started a conversation with them about another issue we were having with them. She was in the middle of having the state attorney's office ask some questions about activities they were trying to force her into paying for. It wasn't going over well with the HOA, and she took this opportunity to introduce herself. While she may be non-confrontational, when it comes to small things, she will stand up for herself, and when it comes to it. Her introducing herself changed everyone's tones, and they became oh so polite. Karen tried to play the victim to her and say that I was mean and could use some manners when engaging with people. I love my soon-to-be wife, and she let her paint her tale on how she was a victim. When she finished, she looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You know I was the one holding the leash and I was standing right there while he was grilling. So no, you got the same respect you gave." She paled and faded to the back. That's when your president of the HOA stepped in and told me I can't have the grill and that I can be fined and he'll be the one calling the cops next time. Roger that. It's my job to enforce regulations in the military. I spend hours reading instructions. Nothing pleases me more than when I can shove the black and white in another a-hole's face to work to get my guys what they are owed or to force them to do the job right. So you want me to follow the rules? Copy that, buddy. So I began to do my research and I found a few interesting things. No HOA by law can be enforced if it's not in the state database. This particular HOA's bylaws were last updated 1994 and it was 2016. They state they follow my county's fire code, which follows NFPA. Finally, the exact lat and longitude coordinates of the HOA's property lines. So I get a login for the state's database and print the HOA's bylaws. I print the NFPA, which states in a multifamily home you can store propane tanks no bigger than 2.7 liters, but they can total no more than 5.4 liters cumulatively. I go to Lowe's and get a rope tape measurer and stakes. I pull up Google Maps and mark the HOA boundary line on it. Lo and behold, what do I find? A drainage ditch that is city property, not 10 feet from where I was grilling. So I take my coordinates, my stakes, and go carefully mark the section of city property. Now for the revenge. I call the city-county fire department and request a permit to grill on said city property. They said go for it, and I didn't need a permit for it, so no one would care. I insisted, and they said it's my $50. They issued an event open flame. So with both permits, it was $100, but I got permission from the city to grill there for 6 months. The next day at 0700 I went to set up, carefully measuring so I was at least 3 feet into the city property, setting up my cooler with enough meat and beer to grill till doomsday, then waited for the fireworks. It didn't take long for Karen to come screaming at me. I mean, I was 10 feet from the community pool and 3 feet from the sidewalk gazebo that led to the pool. I just hit record on my phone and politely told her she had no need to yell and that I'm breaking no laws. She kept screaming about no grilling and how she's tired of me and how she's going to get me arrested and kicked out if it's the last thing she does. She hasn't liked me since the moment she saw me and has just been waiting to get me kicked out. That now she knows which condo is mine and it's just a matter of time till she finds something. On and on. I guess me polite and showing zero fear was pissing her off, so she tried to come take my stuff. Big no-no. As she reached for my cooler, I broke out my NCO voice and told her if she so much as brushes a finger against my property, I would remove the offending body part with force if necessary. This sent her scurrying off again. About 20 minutes later, I see 2 cop cars pull up and Mr. HOA president himself. He's all chummy with the cops, and as they approach, I hear him saying, "Yep, same guy. I already told him once before he can't grill in the HOA grounds." He comes to stop at about 10 feet from me, and one cop stays with him while the other keeps walking up to me. I have a shit-eating grin on my face, and I can hardly wait for the conversation to happen. The cop is slightly off-put by my joyous face and the slight giggle when I ask what seems to be the problem, officer. I get informed that I'm in violation of the bylaws and have been warned once already, so I'm going to receive a ticket for disturbing the peace for threatening the HOA when they were trying to enforce the rules. Ticket for an illegal open flame, ticket for illegal storage of flammable substance, and on and on. The last was if I didn't pack up, I would be arrested and removed. Now that he was done, I first handed him my permit from the city to grill. He took it, walked back to the president, and they discussed it for a moment, and then returned. Says you can't get a permit from the city to grill on private property. I then showed him the coordinates for the HOA and the Google Maps gridded, drawing, and my current GPS location. Mind you, I'm smiling and handing sheet after sheet to him because the grid was not all in one sheet, and had addendums. It took about 4 minutes to explain to him, and as I was about to hand him more, he held up a hand to stop me. He then asks how long I had planned this with a smirk. I told him about a week, and he gave me a look of disbelief but moved on. He then asked me if I threatened Karen. I just played back the recording to him, and then he said nothing seems out of place here, and then I was free to go. I stopped him and asked if I could file a complaint for HOA harassment through him. He said no, and that the city clerk office is the correct place, but he would document harassment by 2 of them and file the report for me. In my state, it's illegal to be harassed by the HOA. It comes with jail of a few months, fines as high as $5,000, and immediate removal from the board and possibility of recovery of damages. I settled for them both being removed from the board instead of filing a complaint. I wave to Karen every day I grill or show her my leash if I had O. And with that, my friends, we've reached the end of today's video. If I had one word of advice to give to anyone who's about to write a Reddit post, it's to please proofread for my sake, because I absolutely cannot stand when I have to read a story like this and there are so many grammatical errors through the structuring of the sentences that I have to just basically guess what they were trying to say. As always, this was an absolute blast, and I hope you guys join me for tomorrow's video, but if you liked it and can't quite wait, be sure to just check out some of our other stuff and maybe even subscribe. I look forward to seeing all of you guys in the next video. Thank you, and good night.